You have the floor, Chief Stanley.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you moving us around. We were a little tied up this morning or something. First of all, I have grave concerns about the town in general. I know that you guys are really up against it this year, and I don't envy your position. Pretty tough position to be in. I think that you're all well aware that anything that was in any of these budgets, not just mine, but throughout the town, is pretty well stripped out. And there's no way that people can even deliver their regular services. So I know we're looking at a no-win situation. I understand that. It doesn't make it any easier. But it's your community, your town, and we have everything we can do in the police department. We've done everything we possibly can to get it to the level it's at. So that's a good thing. We've won the highest awards possible. Only 40 departments in the state are accredited. The International Association of Chiefs of Police gave us the Gold Award for traffic safety, as well as AAA. No one else got that. I think there are only about 4 of them in the state. We've pushed real hard with grants, as much as we possibly can, but as you know, there are trickle-down effects. Federal government has cut out a lot of grants, states cut out a lot of grants, and it makes it even more difficult to bottom feed, and that's what we're doing. It's very difficult. There's nothing, we've tried everything under the sun. In fact, we are right now partnering with Department of Public Health and some health agencies to look at some grant money to pay for school resource officers, things along that line. It's tough. We have a strategic plan that I was hoping to have ready in advance of January, but it'll be ready actually the end of January. And I'll make sure you each get a copy of it. Myself and staff members have been working on it, and there's a lot of good news in it about how we got to where we are today. For instance, proactive, self-initiated calls for service are way up. That means the officers are working real hard and being responsive to neighborhoods. Quality of life complaints are way down. Reactive calls for service, when the public actually has to call us and we react to that call, are down. Motor vehicle enforcement up, personal injury accidents down. So it's all working, the plan is working. Everything has happened, and again, when the strategic plan is delivered to you, you'll see the documentation that shows the successes and how we got to where we are today. Now, none of us figured we were going to be faced with such a financial disaster as most cities and towns in the country is facing. So that obviously makes it even more difficult. So what we've done is we've looked at and are working towards smart policing, it's called, DDACs, data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety. We have been working with national experts who are out there and available to us free of charge, National Highway Traffic Safety and so forth, and we have instituted a plan which we will make available to you and to the Board of Selectmen. In fact, we're going to be asking the chairman to go before the board in January, the end of January, the end of this month. One of the problems the police department has is we're never at full strength. The documents that I was able to produce for you with the help of my staff shows how many people we are down all the time through collective bargaining agreements, contractual obligations, and so forth. We need to carry a lot of these people on the books, yet we haven't seen them for quite some time. Use of the sick bank, use of other reasons. They've been out of work. Well, those slots on an organization that is built upon minimum staffing as it is, minimum safety staffing to keep men on the road safe and ultimately the residents safe. If you build an organization on that without any type of buffer in there, then you're faced with the fact that every time someone's out, you could be in a position to fill a shift. That's pretty much where we're at because of the loss of these multiple officers we're still carrying in the book. The bad news is I'm paying them, a lot of them, but I'm also having to pay replacement officers because I don't have enough buffer in the shifts. we're dealing with some of those issues in collective bargaining, which isn't the proper place to discuss, but I'm working with the town administrator to hopefully plug some of those holes. What I've had to do over the course of the last few months, I've had to drop one of my I had 2 narcotic officers. We had to pull a narcotics officer. I just pulled a detective. And these people are being put into the mix on patrol so that the patrol force, which is the backbone of any organization, is in fact maintaining as much strength as we possibly can have. The problem with that is that the type of investigations being done by a very successful criminal investigation division and narcotic division, which you see weekly in the paper, the work that those people are doing on a regular basis has been compromised. Because I've cut the narcotics group in half, lost one of 4 detectives, total strength, including the supervisor. That makes it pretty tough. So investigations that take an awful lot of time and involvement are being let go and put on back burners instead of us being able to hammer it hard like we've been doing. In addition to that, we have met with the courts, and we're trying to find a way to cut back even further on court time. We are dealing with that. You'll notice that the court line item is up to almost $100,000 a year. That's contractual obligations of 3 hours when the officers go to court. Now, again, you can look at that 2 ways. You can say that's a lot of money, but you can also see the productivity that the men and women of the Wareham Police Department are putting out every day and realize that they're involved in some pretty serious stuff regularly. And if they weren't as aggressive and hardworking as they are, we surely would be in a tough position right now. We're making a dent, but it's tough. It's a dangerous community of police at times. We've also dealt with other issues to try to cut back on any overtime. But there's nowhere to move. There's nowhere to go. Other than the personnel issue, and again, it's clearly stated within my report here, but other than the personnel issue, a critical factor that we have to deal with, and I know that you all have heard this many times and surely understand it, but like a lot of municipalities is how do you pay for it, is the cruiser situation. I mean, you know, I don't have anybody on any elected board in town, from the Board of Selectmen to FinCom to Capital Planning, who don't say, we understand, but we can't get to how do we fix it. So, we tried the leasing opportunities and so forth. They surely held down the fort for a while, but the $150,000 approximately a year that goes into leasing of vehicles is a critical number that really needs to be built into the budget until the town can afford to outright purchase. Without the $150,000, which, one person's opinion, that $150,000 shouldn't be in capital, it should be in the operating expense, because it is an operating expense, because they're rolling over every couple of years. That $150,000 should be built into the operating budget in an effort to at least keep that fleet going. And there are others who believe it should be in the capital program, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer, but at the same time, it's out there. From my perspective, I look to you as the Finance Committee to understand exactly what our needs are and hopefully help us solve those needs. And then the portable radio situation is critical. There are 2 things cops need, the most important thing to cops, other than obviously their vest and their weapon, but the thing that they use all the time is that radio, that portable radio. That's their lifeline. And transportation, the cruiser to get there. Those 2 issues are so critical. This town, when they did purchase radios a long time ago, I don't know the exact year, bought basically the cheap way out. We paid the price. Those radios are junk. They're extremely old, and they're junk. Now, I had, when I was working both jobs, North Andover and Wareham, I brought with me on loan 15 portable radios from North Andover, and they were marked North Andover Police. our guys use them down here. We changed the frequency, our guys use them. The chief of police in North Andover called me and asked me to return them because of the recent situation which took place in Connecticut at the schools. North Andover Police needed to upgrade some of the radios they have located in schools. They needed the radios back for all public buildings and so forth. So obviously I had to give them back. That makes our situation even more critical today with the loss of those 15 radios. So those are some of the major issues I'm dealing with, and I am in a tremendously unenviable position right now because as a father, as a police chief, and as a person who believes in the educational environment and to make sure that it maintains a certain sanctity so that it's not a police state, I'm in a position where right now I need to look at the possibility of pulling my school resource officer out to assist in filling the patrol force. I have nowhere else to go. I've already done detectives. I'm now at a point where I have to look at pulling out Carl Baptiste, who has done a tremendous job at working with the young people in town. So that's where I'm coming from. So unless somebody hit a winning megabucks ticket in the name of the town last night, I'm up for any questions you may have in particulars.
Anyone have any particular questions here?
You can start.
No, go ahead.
With regard to the radios, is the request in here and what is the cost?
Yeah, there's a request in the capital line item for around $90-something thousand.
158,700.
What is it? 158, all right? Which will get us to. I just want to look at the actual sheet for a minute.
Is it in the department budget or in the capital?
No, not
It's in the capital budget.
No, it's under capital.
Oh, it's in the capital.
It's in the
Yeah, it's in the
Return
capital.
to the capital plan
Yep.
is the first page.
Right. So, and that's to replace 85 radios. That's to do it right. That's to take all the radio situation we have and do it right. But I'm in a critical need right now to get that taken care of. That is huge.
I am. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just looking to get it.
Yeah.
We pretty much understand what you need and what you're requiring. And I don't envy your position. I really don't envy your position. But the town itself is facing, on our schools, $1.7 million. And the taxpayers of this Commonwealth, of our town, aren't willing to come out and do an override for the schools or do an override for anything. They've pretty much proven that. So we're in a difficult situation. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's certainly not anything that's personal. Well, and you come from a very affluent community when it comes to police and being able to have what you need. Down here, we just don't have the, we have the need, we have the same need, probably more.
More, definitely.
And we just don't have the resources.
No, it's tough, Donna, and we've talked about this
Yeah.
stuff, and I don't think there's any disagreements. It's
It's just,
lack of funding, and I hear you.
exactly. So I guess what we're looking to see, what can we do with the least amount, and other organizations, we're looking toward volunteers, we're looking toward other things. Are there places, how many IT people do you have at the police department? Can you cut back there? Dispatchers, is that an area? it's not popular what we're looking to do, but what we're looking to do is make the necessary adjustments to cover these. I mean, for instance, we got the jet skis last year. And you got them given to you and nothing, but they still cost gas, they still cost manpower, and how effective were they?
Yeah.
Maybe they were, maybe.
They were, yeah.
Okay, but that's something that we, you know, we do have a harbor patrol, and we were able to get by with things like this. Making it better is always great, and adding new resources is always great, and I'm sure each and every one of us here are for that. And getting that motel torn down has just been a godsend to the community. But we need to look at things differently. We need to look at things realistically. This town is not willing to offer an override until this town can come up and say, hey, look, we're gonna do the right thing and pay what we need to pay. Or some of us, some folks just can't pay it. But we're gonna have to continue to make these cuts across the country. It's not just here in Wareham, but across the country. Yes.
Right.
The one thing that he didn't explain was we had had the options of the reduction of 2%, the level funding, and the increase by 2%. His level funding results in, it would be the reduction of that position of the IT. That position will no longer be funded.
Yeah. That's at level funding.
Mm-hmm.
So, as the teachers or the school was saying last night, we still have contractual obligations. So even though when we level fund the departments, it is in fact a reduction.
And you know, Madam Chairman, one of my issues, right, I mean, and we all feel this way, it's not a question of we feel this way and you don't, we all feel this way. I have an added responsibility. The added responsibility is protection of life. You know, protection of property, but protection of life. Now, I've always been able to look in the mirror and say, I know that my officers, who I'm sworn to protect, that's my job to make sure they're protected, are in fact properly protected. I never want to be in a position where I am at a police officer's funeral and I have to look myself in the mirror when I'm going off to that funeral and look at sons and daughters and mothers and fathers and wife or husband and say, listen, I'm sorry about the loss of Officer so-and-so, but we weren't able to keep minimum staffing in the street due to some budget cuts. And for those reasons, you know, we saved $100,000, but we lost your husband. None of us want that, and I understand that. No one is even going down that road, but you know what? That's the reality of my job. I don't have to worry about just my employees. I have to worry about their extended families, and I take that moral obligation very seriously. Whether it was North Andover, Wareham, or the Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, SWAT and tactical units, the people I've had under my command all understood that, and I have to fight dearly for them. This year's a little different, right? You guys have your back against the wall. I surely understand that, right? Really bad. It's a tough year. I understand that. I'm willing to work with you, but understand we are, in fact, trying to keep that minimum people. We're cutting back where we can.
And yes, go ahead.
I'd like to respond to that and express again my appreciation, but say ultimately, that's not your responsibility. Ultimately, that bad scenario will fall back on us, the Finance Committee, the Town Administrator, the Board of Selectmen, and the legislative body who decides what the funding are. It's a financial decision, so you do your job. We who make the financial decisions will bear the burden of that with you. And
Yeah.
We're all very aware of that. It's horrible. And I would like to give credit to the chairman of the school committee who made a very interesting statement last night when he stood up. After we all spoke very passionately about how much we care about education and how much we want to see that funded. And he said the #1 priority of the community is to make its citizens feel safe. And that really took me by surprise, because that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting the usual budget battles about who gets more allocations, veterans, seniors, students. I mean, we always have this, and that was the first time that I felt like it's not a battle anymore. It really isn't fighting over who gets these resources. How can we share them with each other to make it the best community? So that, I'm very grateful that we're all having this discussion now, and you need to understand that that's where we come from as well.
Yep, I agree.
We all have this recognition, okay, this is it, the rubber hit the road, here it is, let's scrape it up and see what we've got. So that being said, I was just going to ask for the reallocation on some of the numbers, because overall, looking at the 2011 and 2012, we've got some different figures. I don't see anything in the part-time. The seasonal is increased. Is that just a restructure?
You don't see anything on what section?
On the part-time line item.
We cut that out.
Yeah, it's gone.
Gone,
Yep.
okay. The seasonal is increased.
Yes, and you know, from the best bang for the buck, those seasonals keep that influx that we have at an absolute minimum under control. They help drive out the problem. So at the rate of pay they're getting without benefits and so forth, that's the best money you can spend.
And overtime seems to be significantly decreased. Is that because we've got more staff?
No,
No.
that's because I had nowhere else to go. No, believe me, it's not because we have no staff. If you see the section in there, I've got multiple officers who are out,
Yeah,
all right?
I'm gonna bring this to work so my guys don't feel so badly about what we have staff deficiencies this year. It's like,
Yeah.
you have problems, okay.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
brutal.
it's-
But I mean, I had nowhere else to go, so that's why I'm pulling detectives and other things. It's just, it's an awful position to be in, but there's no other place to
There's
go.
nobody that you can fill the overtime spots with. You're actually reallocating.
No, I don't have the money to fill them. There's plenty of guys who would work the overtime. I don't have the money. So I need to contain as much as I possibly can. So in an effort to make budget this fiscal year, right now, I've got all these other issues with these people, but I've got my boss sitting here to my right who is whipping me about, you gotta hit your numbers, there's nowhere else to go, and we're working together on ways to try to, as when he was budget director, you know, trying to, you know, knock it down wherever we can without compromising the safety of our residents and our officers.
Mr. Trudell?
First, I'd like to compliment you. The town administrator gave you a high mark. He looked at your budget, and his numbers match your numbers. I regard that as a fine passing grade, if you will, because he's. I was going to ask you how the additional 5 police officers were working out and reducing overtime, but you seem to have answered the question. It wasn't really working, but you had the choice.
Yeah, we're back to, if you look at the numbers and who's out, we lost them. We had them, but we lost them, basically, yeah.
There are some perceptions. I wonder how the harbor master and the assistant harbor masters view the police officers out on the water in terms of the fact that they're probably being paid more than the assistant harbor masters in per hourly basis. And it's almost like a conflict of what's going on in terms of, we are a lucky town, we have harbor masters and we have assistant harbor masters. From a PR point of view, it probably wasn't as good as it could be. Cruisers. We're right back where I was the first year I looked at capital planning. I walked up to the maintenance shop and there were cruisers out there that they were cannibalizing so they could keep the fleet running.
August of '09 all over again. We talked back in August of '09. Alan talked back in August of '09. We sat in my office, I think the 3 of us, right, Alan? And here we are, yeah, no question.
And from my perspective, I'm looking at your capital requests. Your capital requests are valid. I mean, I can't dispute the fact that you need your portable radios, you need cruisers. I mean, the cruiser is the officer's home, it's his heat, it's his cooling, it's his computer, it's his recording, it's his everything. And I'm not giving him the best that I can give him when I don't replace vehicles.
And on that line, you know, the scary part is when I estimated, when we put the numbers together for June 30th of 13, if we don't get funding, I never thought of it, I should have put it in there, but I mean, it's no sense singing to the choir. But just imagine the situation, June 30th of 14, it's not gonna work.
No argument, Chief.
Yeah, I know.
We understand. Conversely, I will say that the first year the Finance Committee was there, Dan Cheever stood up with Dick Paulson, and they put a chart up on the wall. And they said, this is our growth rate. This is what our tax rate is growing at, and we will soon reach the brick wall. In the last couple of years, I've watched the town administrators have less and less latitude in the monies that they've been able to squirrel away, and they're reaching a point where there's no squirrel. And we're arriving at that point. And this year and next year are going to be exceptionally brutal, and either there's going to be drastic reduction in our services, or there's going to have to be a reorientation in the way we deal with financing the town services.
Yeah, and just going in line with that, you know, we talk about grants, and believe me, I'm as aggressive as I can with grants, and we've, over the last couple of years, we've, say, picked up, I don't know, 70,000, 68,000 a year in emergency 911 grants for the ComSom. This year, what I had to do with that money was, instead of getting the emergency medical dispatch software and some other stuff for our computer system to aid the dispatchers when these calls come in, emergency medical dispatchers, they can walk you through. If you call up and say, I have a loved one on the ground, the dispatcher's gonna walk you through while the ambulance is in the way, and fire and police. I had to put off a lot of those things I wanted to get to reach a higher level, and I had to take the money and put it back into salary. So I'm doing everything I possibly can, so we put off that equipment need, and I contacted 911 and said, listen, I'd like to change that to a salary, to infuse my salary, and we were okay with that. So that, again, plugging a hole, you know?
And to your budget, I want to compliment you. You did not cut back on your training and on your ammunition. One of the key things that a lot of departments cut back on, and you've maintained that. Compliment to you. I realize how critical it is, but sometimes that's one of the first that gets cut. So.
Yeah, we can't find ourselves in that position. I spent the whole morning with an attorney regarding lawsuits and so forth. And one thing that I try to watch from a forecasting standpoint is the town's position when it comes to civil and vicarious liability exposure. And when you hit it in the head, you can't do it.
I'm through, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
anyone?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
you know, philosophically, we all agree. There's no disagreement between you and us in any way, shape, or form. But the brass tacks aren't good. All right? The requests you're making all make sense, they're common sense. It's how the way the police department has to be run. We need raises, we need increases. The problem is we don't have the money. We truly don't have the money. The budget that came to us in this book did not take into consideration contractual agreements at the schools that would equate to some $1 million. New standards put out by the federal government are going to require textbooks of $500,000 and $250,000 for pretty much maintaining the buildings and fixing them. I said last night, we can say, you know, we're not doing the same thing in the library, let the windows fall out. The books, let's kick them down the road for another year. Still $1 million there, and that doesn't include your requests. So now the question comes down to, well, we also have 2.5, they won't pass it. Right? Try it, they won't pass it. We only have X amount of revenue. The governor's talking about cutting even the state aid. And his speech last night, you know, he's looking at increased taxes at the state level, or surely going to make it that much harder at our level. So now it comes down to, we've got a little bit of a problem. And then we need to find $1 million, or we need to cut services, or we need to reallocate across the board. I think all of us would gladly reallocate to, as I said, public safety and education, because those are number one and number two. Safety always the second being education, because it's constitutional, the public education is there. So help me out, chief, where do I get the money? What departments do I shift, who do I shut down, who do I close? Because what can we do? How do I get you $165,000 for cruisers? How do I even get you $158,000 for the radios?
Can't get books.
We don't have it.
I know.
And I'm just, that's the brass tacks of it, all right?
Here's your
And
finance
it's a
guy right
terrible-
here.
And no. Because he's an MBA doesn't mean he's gonna be able to print the money. That's our other problem, because we don't have a press here.
I was never good
okay?
with math, Frank.
And, and I also wanna say, this is not a 2014 problem. This was a 2012 problem.
Right.
2000 and 2013. And we've had some one-time revenues. What's your name again?
Sullivan.
As Mr. Sullivan said last night. And at least one of those was severely in question, and it's gonna come back to haunt us. We know it is.
Yep.
We don't have any more one-time revenues. There are no grant monies. The only solution we have is either to, well, the only solution we have is we're gonna have, the bulk of our budget is payrolls. We have to cut personnel. And, that can come either by reducing the size of the budget for individual departments or closing departments. And as I said, if you have any suggestions, I personally would appreciate them. All right? I think all the department heads in some way have to sit together and sit down and decide what can the town afford. And we can philosophize all we want in front of the cameras and all we want in front of the town meeting, et cetera. It still comes down to, we don't have $1 million. We don't have it. And we can't get it. So now we have to sit down as a group and try to come up with a solution. No, I don't want to cut anything out of your, out of your budget. And I know you need another, $250,000. Don't have it. Got any ideas? Now you know how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, if I did, I would have talked to you a lot sooner than now. I would have picked up the phone and called you or Donna or Alan or Peter. I mean, I would have, Derek, I mean, I don't know. The killer is, look at, the health insurance deal that's going on across the country. That's what's killing us all.
It started 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Went on for a while.
And you've tried everything, I know it. You know why I know you tried everything? Because I saw this whole process take place in North Andover 10 years ago, where they had to fix a lot of these things, and they were robbing Peter to pay Paul, and they put up in town meeting, the wolf is at the door, the big picture of a wolf. And, been there, done that, right? Been through this whole process. They would just happen to do it a few years ago, and it's hitting us now. So on one note, right, you guys in Wareham have hung in there a little longer than a lot of other places have. And you've robbed Peter to pay Paul to try to keep this thing going, but it's at the door. And
It is.
I wish I had a better answer, I don't.
This is not a question. Looking ahead, what's out ahead to make the police department policing more efficient? And the one thing that comes to my mind in driving in Europe, you can go through a red light and somebody takes your picture and you get a ticket in the mail. Is there a way to reduce, do you see ways to reduce the need for
Yes.
people on the streets?
Absolutely, and we're doing it. In the strategic plan, which I'm going to deliver to all of you by the end of the month, what we've done is, we set the foundation, we set the framework in this town from a policing standpoint with the accreditation and so forth. And we built this, and we have the buy-in from the men and women of the police department. And they've been great. They really have. You always get some that are shining stars, but as a whole, let me tell you, start to finish, those people have been great, cooperative individuals who have worked for the better good of the police and the community. We have instituted a program called DDAX, Data-Driven Approach about Traffic and Crime. What it is we've had the experts in for free from the federal government as a laboratory. And we work with them and said, hey, listen, how can we, with limited resources, get this program in? So it's a live program. Government supports this, and it's called Intelligent-Led Policing. It's about finding hotspots in real time. It's to say, hey, listen, you've got a problem over here. It could be as simple as there's an accidents are taking place at this intersection. And it may be involving engineering, it may be involving enforcement, it may be involving other issues. So education, so deal with that. And they'll pop those things up and reduce your calls for service. Now, we've done that. So DDAX is in place. It's going operational through a staff meeting probably in 30 days. Kevin has really been working hard with the patrol division to get them to do just that, to work smarter. So the successes which lead to less calls for service have taken place over the last couple of years. The cops who are out there are working harder, proactive, self-initiated calls for service are way up, reactive, residents calling us for service are down. So that's good. So we get that going on. Add to that now the next stage, which is DDAX. And now we've done everything we possibly can. The management systems are in place. The officers have been trained. And now we go to this next, almost like going to a specialist now, a surgeon who's going to cut out the problem areas and the issues. And we do that through strong, aggressive patrol in those areas. Doesn't do me any good to stick a cruiser in some dead-end street and have the cop sit there when he should be over here where the problem is. So we're right at that point. So again, from a management standpoint, the leadership standpoint, the leadership team has done everything they possibly can to use our resources to the best possible way. We realize how valuable, limited they are. So we're on it. And you'll see that when you get this.
But is there a way to just, to pick up the speeder without having to have a policeman involved? Or the red light runner, or the stop sign?
Yeah, you know what, I'm not, you'd think I might be. I'm not a big believer in Big Brother. I'm not a big believer in red light cameras. I'm not a big believer in a lot of those things. I think that there's nothing like the personal touch. There might, I was never in favor of these red light cameras and all those things. And there's a lot of challenges about that stuff out there. I just feel like, you know, it's just.
Will it reduce the headcount?
I don't think it will, because you still get that cop who makes the stop, and the guy's got a gun in the car, and his life's on the line. And, I mean, the other night at 9 o'clock at night down on Onset, I stopped the vehicle, and before I know it, I had 4 other cruisers there with me, because, as it turned out, when they heard me call in that plate, they knew who was in the car, and I don't know these guys. And there were 3 guys in the car, and next thing I know, I get everybody swarming me because there were a couple of bad guys in the car. My guys are up against this all the time on the street. So they need that protection of somebody getting there quick to help them out. And I saw it firsthand, the way they cover each other and work hard to protect each other, and ultimately you as residents. I wish there was an easier way, but it's all labor intensive.
The one point, and Chief, and I think you all can agree with, a lot of police officers in Wareham have given up and moved to other communities because they're saying our schools aren't adequate.
Yeah.
I can go over this list and I can point out in the last 2 years, 7 of them that don't even live in our community anymore.
I've heard that from them also, Dawn. Yes.
Because they don't believe in the school system.
Right.
So we're not even keeping our own police here because of our schools.
Yeah.
How do we answer that? You're good enough to get a paycheck from, but you're not good enough for us to send our children to school.
Some cities and towns have done residency requirement that deal with, you know, those issues, again, contractual obligations, a lot of that stuff, but hey, listen, I'm not saying the school system's getting more money than they know what to do with.
Oh, no,
And
I know you're not. It's just like, but when you sit there and you look at it, this one's gone, this one's gone, this
Yeah.
one's gone. And I can go down the line of good police officers, and they're all very good police officers. They don't live here anymore because our schools aren't good enough. That's what we're facing, folks, our schools too. We just don't, we're not producing to keep our law enforcement even in our community. Yes.
I want to ask you what you would do in a scenario that I think may very well happen. You don't get the vehicles and you don't get the radios. Because town meeting won't pass the article. What does that mean? What happens next?
You know, the tough part is, right, I mean, I'm charged with responsibility of doing the best I can to live within the budget. So my maintenance costs go berserk. You run the risk of a cruiser having a devastating front end problem and getting an accident, having an officer injured, which adds further to our health insurance costs, never mind the personal problems for the officer. We do the best we can, Frank. We're gonna have to, you know, I know you don't want the guys riding around 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 mile cars.
No, I'm just saying,
But-
I think it's a very real possibility. What does it mean for the people of the town? Just the potential of an injury?
It means that we're back to, Alan, when we talked and we all sat down, it means that that cruiser going on that call, tire could fall off and wheel could fall off, and it's stuck going to a call for service. That, 2009 when I got here, that's what was happening. So we're back there again, right? So don't depend on that cop getting there, because he can't drive to get there at any type of, you know, quick rate to get to your home, because his front end's gonna fall off. Or, and you know, the problem too is, you could be faced with, from a union standpoint, where they're gonna get involved with an unsafe work condition, and you know what? It's the truth. So it gets to a point, look there's no way those cars are gonna last until July 1, 2014. You saw the numbers for June 30th of this year, so, I don't know, I guess we're gonna have to make our case to people.
And the radios?
Radios, there's no communications. I have no way. People say, well, why don't you share the radios? Well, during the summer, we have all these summer specials come in, especially. They're our lifeblood to keep these towns, to keep these areas where the tourists go and so forth, safe. I don't have any radios for them this year. The radios we have are not capable of talking back and forth for any length of time. They're falling apart. They are, I can bring you to see them. Any one of you are welcome to come up there. No communications, no vehicles. Those are your two critical areas right now.
Yes, great.
Just a clarification, as I read this budget, there is no capital items at all in the budget at the moment, is that correct?
None.
Right.
I was afraid that was the answer.
Yeah, none, zero.
Madam Chair, there's just one thing I was thinking about when we were talking about the stop signs with the cameras on them and maybe that could reduce headcount. I would say the stop signs with cameras on them would be to disperse the police officers everywhere. Let's face it, this is not a community where we're really worried about people running stoplights.
No.
There's a lot of issues here. The grant the chief was speaking about was because what we were targeted as, out of the 351 cities and towns, we were top 14 for violent crime with our youth.
Did you,
That's how we're getting the grant opportunity. Top 14 out of 351. We're not a small little village town. We've got city issues of crime, drugs, gangs. And that's where the concern is. You might even say, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you might even say the police are pulling their kids out, not just because of the schools, because maybe they don't feel it's a safe town. And that's one of the scary parts too.
can you imagine, I'm glad you brought that up. I sent this in that email to everyone that Derek had sent out with my beginning package. Imagine being in the same group as Lawrence, Lynn, Worcester, Fall River, Chelsea, Brockton, Boston. Eligible municipalities for SSY initiative grant based on youth violence. Wow. I never knew that when I came down here, but my eyes were opened quickly. You guys, with some serious issues.
But those issues also fall back to a failing high school system. Whether they're dropouts, or they get a piece of paper that says you attended for 12 years and have no job opportunities. That's part of the problem as well. They are linked, all right? And the problem is we started this spiral back. It's not now that the spiral started, it already started.
Yeah, I don't
And
disagree
having
with it.
come from Brockton, which I moved into by accident when I first came to the state, these things, once the spiral starts, there's no way to stop it
I think if you ask
without
Lieutenant-
drastic action.
If you ask Lieutenant Walsh, who's lived here, he can tell you the families, the multi-generations that, you know, probably dropped out and it's crime and it's going through there.
I know he does. I know he does, and he still lives here. His kids play sports here, so he still believes in the community.
And he goes to school here.
Yes, so,
So as our better students leave and the common denominator comes down in the classrooms, which it is, there's no denying it, all right, we have a source of one of your major problems.
Yeah, no question. And this grant, not that it's gonna fix the problem, but if we get this sizable grant, the money, a lot of the money it's not coming to the police department. It's partnership with public health to bring in counseling services and other things to try to get people back on track, the nucleus, the family, all sorts of other things that are all part of this whole mess. And to deal with these kids, to try to get them back on track. But it's also to save my school resource officer. I have the money in there for school resource officer, and not just the money for him, but the money for health and benefits and all that, so that, you know, he's quick to point out to me when I say I need this, I need that. He says, well, it's not that number, it's also this and this and this and this. I only see that number. He says, Rick, I'm looking at these numbers, compounding that.
May I ask you, we have some programs in our school system which people agree with and disagree with, but basically what they're designed for is that they're second chance systems. The discussion has come up as to, do you continue to do them or do you shut them down? If those programs do close, do you see an impact on your department?
Oh, yeah, it's gonna compound it even more. Absolutely.
I was afraid to say that.
Yeah.
Sam?
Your school, I've forgotten the title.
School resource officer, Carl Baptiste currently.
Can you tell me a little bit what he does, out of curiosity? I know I can imagine some of it, of course, from the title.
Sure, look at, when the school resource officer program first started, it was about building relationships. It was kind of a secondary DARE program, drug alcohol resistance program, which was met with some skepticism. So the school resource officer program came in for a couple of things. A, to build a relationship instead of us versus them, it is us together as a team, police and students, police and schools and so forth. So it was there for that reason, to start building relationships with the kids so that the trust was there for such things as drug use, sexual abuse, both outside and in the homes. So that people who have those everlasting scars that remain with them forever and get passed on to generations would hopefully go to a police officer who had trust in, and it wasn't just a disciplinarian, so that he or she could deal with the kids to affect change in their life. So that's how it started. It evolved into also a protective element within the schools. Sandy Hook's a prime example, and there's all sorts of proponents and opponents of gun regulation and so forth. But I venture to say that with an officer who's properly trained in the schools, that officer can act as a protective agent for a person with mental disabilities or just a hate-filled individual who will walk into a situation like that to kill people. Our school resource officer, we have trained in the National School Resource Officer Program. In fact, what was it, Kevin, 2 weeks prior to Sandy Hook, we had him on an active shooter course, which at first he says, well, what do I have to have this active shooter course for? You go into the active shooter course, and he has the training and the best training on how to handle an active shooter in a tight environment like that, where you have, in fact, a lot of potential victims. So it used to be Back in the old days, it used to be wait and call in for reinforcements and so forth. Now it is active shooter training, you focus in and you attack.
Also, Chief, 2 days before the Sandy Hook tragic incident, 2 days before it, Officer Carl Baptiste did a program with the high school for an active shooter in the building. What would we do? We did a drill. That was 2 days before the Sandy Hook
Right.
incident.
So, it just shows you, right, they're there for a lot of reasons. But you know what? Last night, right, Lieutenant Walsh and I at the station last night, and Carl was there with a couple of kids and their parents. He's a counselor, he's a protector, he's a friend, he's an enforcer when needed. He's all those things. And you know what I need? I probably need 3 of them for this town.
I wouldn't go there, Chief. I wouldn't go there. I really wouldn't go there. You need three of Carl. I mean, you said we have to have a trust in the individual. And the people have to have a trust in the individual, and they have to earn that trust. There are a lot of issues that are sitting out here, and you know them as well as I do. I mean, do we have to have that type of person? Yes. No, I'm not going anywhere personally at all. I'm just saying, I agree in your philosophy right there, but
But what I'm saying is, we could use an SRO in the high school, we could use an SRO in the
Sure we
middle
could.
school.
Absolutely.
Could use an SRO, that's what I'm saying, we need more people. Can't have them, I'm gonna be lucky if I can save one.
no, I understand. Yes.
I'm sorry, we actually had to bring up the example of Sandy Hook because long before that happened, I have 2 sons who are graduates of the DEAR program. Thank you very much. And anecdotally, because quantitatively, we can't give you a number of what a resource officer stops because we don't know what didn't happen as a result of it. But I've seen 2 generations of kids come through the schools, and I hear the ripple effects. I get the good feeling. So quantitatively, I can't tell you. But qualitatively, I know there's a huge value to that.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to go back, as we were trying to speculate what town meeting will do, which we can never guess in this town. It's a really dangerous gamble. But as you're aware, we're not the decision makers. The town body ultimately will be the decision makers. Whether they make good decisions or not, we can opine on afterwards. But I'm going to touch the third wire because I was the one that actually did the study on it and came up with the background for it. And we're not going to do this emotionally. I'm just going to ask the question. Where are we in the contracts? And has there been any further debate to the educational incentive? So I understand it's a contractual discussion at this point. Where are we, first of all, contract-wise?
It's collective bargaining.
Collective bargaining,
Yeah.
okay. Where are we?
The contracts are past due.
Okay, so we're still behind in that, so that's still an issue on the table. And
The contracts are in arrears.
okay. So we're working under the old contracts.
We do have an issue though of unauthorized funds, because town meeting did pass a 50% limitation.
I disagree and state that's a collective bargaining issue.
Okay, and I will just state that it should be a clarified issue. I don't want to go to whether it's earned, qualified, or whatever, but it's been a accounting perspective. One of the things that we work very hard to do is get numbers that we can see and visualize and understand. And Chief, I do thank you very much for the budget because it's very clear where the money is. It comes out of part-time, it goes to seasonal. It's much easier for us to understand. And I think that one of the issues that came up when we looked at what this educational incentive or the Quinn bill added to salaries is it's not an actual number because it's offset by some number that the state may or may not reimburse us by. And I think it would be more clear-cut going forward that we know what the actual number is. We either require our officers to have education and we pay them such, or we don't. And that is probably something that you can't handle. That's something that the town will address on our side. But I think that's just one of those numbers that it was a great idea when the program came out. It worked well for many years. And like other programs, when the funds get pulled, everyone says, oh, how do we get ourselves in this mess? So we need to address that going forward and make it a real number and not something that we're just hoping we're going to get some money for later on down the line.
you touched on one thing. I'm smart enough to not get involved in that discussion, but you did touch on one thing. And I want to thank Cassandra and Kevin. Cassandra, you mentioned the budget and how clear it is and so forth, and believe me, all right, this is the person who puts that together. She has a real expertise in that, really understands it. We talk all the time, we go back and forth, but those are her organizational skills. Kevin this year has worked tirelessly on the budget with me and knows the budget inside and out, and we've been working on it as a team, the three of us, and I want you just to know that, because they've been tremendous assets in this, and I can't thank them enough for what they've done. And I wish I had better answers than Frank. I'll surely be thinking about that and talking to Derek.
Send me anything that you want made public.
Excuse me?
Send me anything that you want made public.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Normally not, but I may have to be in this one, because I need somebody to share my pain.
I hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all coming, and we've all got some serious matters that we have to look at, and we'll have to work it out together, that's all.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Buckminster, if you would, let's begin. We'll catch up.
Good afternoon, I think. Where would you like to start?
At the top.
At the top. Would you like to go line item by line item?
What do you want?
Are we going line item by line item here, or what would you like to do? Discussion of the budget?
We don't have to go line over line. It's basically where are the changes and why are the changes.
Gotcha, not a problem.
Okay, you know, we're going to assume that you've already been through a form of zero-based budgeting in prior years.
Basically, in our description, you do see some changes in our salaries, obviously because of some bargaining things with both my assistant and myself through the negotiations process. So that is reflected in the first regular line item. Part-time, we've carried over the same. We operate 7 seasonal personnel with our department. Overtime, we've stayed pretty much consistent with the hourly rate, mostly for the assistant harbor master when he's on his call-outs, evening operations, whatever goes on. If we get notified to come out, our overtime budget is fairly small, so I feel that we really put a lot of services into what our figures are. Self-explanatory, holidays, vacation, holidays. Holidays, obviously, we do have holidays where we have to be on. It's a busy time of year, so we do have to have coverage. Unfortunately, it falls on the back of having to be funded. If we go down to expenses, pretty much, I only had a few items that were increased. We carried pretty much everything over. My items that were changed will be just want to go down the list here. Fuel is increased. Fuel obviously is the biggest increase I have here. Obviously, we have boats and vehicles that we fuel. I can't fuel our boats at the municipal maintenance department. Fueling for these engines requires an octane that the town does not provide, so I do have to go to an outside source for it. We can get back some of the taxes paid on it through a process through the accounting office, just for some reimbursement. My uniforms did go up. We cover the uniform costs of our seasonal employees, which was $150, not a substantial increase. And just some minor changes on our costs of why they went up. I don't have anything earth-shattering that changed from last year. We do have some funding sources out there. We're obviously taking a initiative with some oyster programs coming up where we're going to be getting involved with transplants and restoration projects. I do have a request out for 2 different areas of trying to get some funding to help offset the cost so it's not completely coming out of our department. Our revenues have been consistent. They've gradually climbed. In the selectmen's meeting prior to town meeting, we did increase our fees. So we'll be seeing a revenue increase in our harbor service permits, as well as we've put into play some fines, I guess if you will, for people that are not maintaining their moorings, people that don't keep stuff going. So we'll see a pretty, for what it's been, a substantial increase in our revenues coming there. So I'm hoping to use that money to start to offset some of our operating expenses, that the town won't have to pick up. Hopefully we won't see that till next year, obviously, because the funding source will show up in that period. And obviously, we talked with Derek over some parking programs, which I think if the town makes an approach with some changes to their beach stickers, dump stickers, right now we're generating. Last year, we generated $155,000 in parking stickers, which are a combined sticker of beach and dump. If there's a parking program in place where the stick can be utilized for other areas, you may see a pretty decent increase, and that goes directly to the town. We also have we generated $33,000 to the town for the shellfish licenses under the recreational. 20% of the money's generated goes to the propagation efforts, as well as the commercial permits that are purchased go to our aquaculture initiative. We brought in $125,000 in mooring fees. The boat ramp brought in $10,000, and we have some increases in our tag fees, which is for when people buy these stickers to get rid of their anything that's got free on it, refrigerators, freezers, things of that nature. So all in all, last year from 1 of 2012 to 12/31 of 2012, we generated $344,000 in revenues, and we'll see an increase obviously with the permit changes as they come up.
That's it? Mr. Greg?
Gary, first of all, I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
So I can start off with that. I have never been completely clear on funding. I know you collect money from, as you went through very nicely, the moorings, et cetera. Is this money only to be used for marine use? How does that work?
Could I approach and give you this?
Sure.
Okay.
We're very informal here. You just stand up and come up and.
It's a crowded meeting, you
There
can
you are.
see.
This
So.
is the breakdown of that.
We're not the celebrity.
Yes.
You can approach us.
Do you have an extra one?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I keep copies for Bonnie here.
Last year we went to a meeting with we can offset we went to a seminar last year in Boston, which involved DCR, which is now combined with the Department of Environmental Management. They talk about the Chapter 91 regulations. The Department of Revenue was there. We had a few different agencies all talking about the uses of this funding that we can come up with. Each town is different, and right now I think, from what I've seen, we have probably the most productive of all the towns that are abutting us with what we do with our money. So, from the Speaker of the Department of Revenue, when we addressed our issues, they did agree that the funding is how we use it is correct. It can be used to offset costs associated with the marine end of our department, but we can't step outside the scope of that. So I can't sit there and fund our whole budget off of it because we deal with shellfishing issues, herring issues, things of that nature. I know, if we could, it would be great, but.
So, I'm sorry, may I as.
I'm gonna move
follow-up?
I'm gonna move to a committee of the whole, since you don't have to come to me unless you want to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Same on your side.
So, the money that you get for moorings, et cetera, and, is the same also true for the, oyster grants and things like that?
No, sir. The money's generated for the oyster restoration projects and all of that is covered through the aquaculture end of it, which goes into our propagations account. So the monies that are generated through that function, through the permits there, that was changed at town meeting where the percentage goes into that, so we could keep those aquaculture programs going. That money the boater money can't be used towards that stuff. So if we want to increase our town moorings, or if we want to grid the harbor, if we want to start doing things like that, this is where that money comes in. And you have two different forms here. We have the harbor service permits, but we also have the boat excise tax money, which goes into the waterways account. Mark Gifford uses it for stormwater, storm drain, I believe, stuff like that. I pulled money out of it this year to do a survey of the Onset Pier, so we could start the ball rolling with getting the pier looked at if a renovation project were to come out of that. So we'd have everything ready to go, basically.
So, help me out on if I'm looking at your department expense for budget, for example, the money that is gathered, let me make it easy, for example, for moorings, et cetera, can be used to offset all of the 262,000 or part of that?
We could use it for portions of, and that's what we ultimately we would end up doing. Like every year, we start funding. In the springtime, we go to town meeting. We've been transferring money out to offset the cost of our seasonal personnel, so that this money is actually paying for the seasonal personnel rather than the budget that you're giving me. So we're transferring that money out and putting it into our budget. So in the fall town meeting, I withdrew money to pay for dockage costs, some upgrades if we have some equipment that has to be changed. We updated our navigational equipment through our boats. I could, if you start looking at line items, fuel, obviously at some point we could look into doing a fuel offset to pay for the costs associated with the boats operating. So we could probably reduce our fuel budget at some point. I would have to say that not really, you can't really do anything with building supplies and things of that nature. Cell phones you can't do anything with. Printing and mailings, we could probably do that because of our permitting.
I get, Gary, what's going on in my mind? Obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, the town is really tight from a budget viewpoint, and looking at how we can fund important things in the school and police department and elsewhere. And I'm really wondering if, what if any pieces of your revenue coming in can be used elsewhere.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be.
No, and again,
Revenue hungry, we see money.
right, no, and I understand it, and I think that's, obviously we can't go into it. We're gonna go into town meeting again this year. I'll request monies to fund our seasonal personnel again, so I think Derek and I talked to the tune of I think it was $40,000 or $50,000 that we were gonna request to be transferred out to offset that payroll. This year our fee structure is gonna change, so like I said, with that revenue change can also come some additional things which we can approach at the fall town meeting, such as fuels and things of that nature, where we'll hold off and we'll carry, instead of requesting that money in the fall, then we'll request it the spring one, so when our budget comes up, we can reduce our line items also. But I think what I'm getting at is, yeah, we can definitely
But
fund
only
some
within
items
his
out of our budget.
So these requests will be lowered by what he thinks he can get.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how these are being shown.
Well, you said your total income was 300 and...
Yeah, and that's a mixture of everything between dump stickers, you know, your shellfish licenses, the permits which go into a separate account, things of that nature. So all in all, yes, our budget, the monies that we're bringing in is about 355,000, I think I said.
And of that, can you give me a estimate? I'm obviously not looking for exact.
Yep.
But if your total revenue was 355,000, how much of that is restricted?
Almost half of it.
Half of it.
Yep.
So-
Because if you're looking at the harbor service permits, that goes into the receipts reserved for appropriations account, which I guess I shouldn't call it restrictive because, I mean, obviously through the efforts of, you know, working with the town, that we do fund items out of our budget for it. So I wouldn't say it's restrictive, but it's definitely, it has to be requested. It can't just be taken.
Okay.
So you do have 158,000 that goes right into town's budget from the stickers. You have another 33,000 that goes right into the town general from shellfish permits.
So you've got 158 and 133.
158 and 33,000.
And 33,
Yep.
yeah. Which is 190,000. So if you,
So that's unrestricted. That's money that we just collect the fees on it for the
So
town.
that's already in.
Yep.
That-
And then
that's showing up.
and then we request to appropriate out of that 125,000, which is the harbor service permits. But, you know, obviously that we have used it to pay for things that are within the department. We've cut out our dockage line item, we've cut out our seasonal personnel line item, things of that nature. So, I mean, we're
So the
reducing.
125 is restricted, because it takes town meeting,
It does take town
it
meeting.
takes town meeting,
Correct.
so it's restricted
Yep.
in a sense, maybe
Yep.
not in the purest legal terms.
And that's under
We have-
the guidelines of the chapter 91. We have.
And
it's
it can only
basically
be
the
used
account
for
is set
certain
up.
items as well, so.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
but those items are, most of your expenses would be, I mean, I assume it could, that 125, for example, could be used for your salary.
I could reduce, it could go towards salary. It can't go completely because we carry multiple hats. I mean.
I understand.
So I mean, a portion of it, and that's why we try to cover the costs of seasonal, because majority of the seasonal is all marine-related boat issues. So
Yeah,
it could go towards that. It could go towards a reduction in the fuel costs that you guys we could cut back. I would have to say that we could eliminate it probably by at least half. And like I said, we eliminated our dockage, and we're trying to find different ways of cutting down on dockage by just utilizing space that we already have. This year, I've ended up pulling our boats out of one of the marinas. It was going to cost us almost $8,000 for 2 boats to stay in a marina this year because they changed their fee structure also. So I removed that because that was going to take out our whole dockage line item, and we're going to use the onset pier instead. And it was cheaper for me to
yep.
do lighting and some camera system enhancements for minimal money, and we'll have the boats rated onset pier now.
I'm just doing rough figures, and forgive me if I'm doing this incorrectly, just please set me straight. But if you're looking at 355,000, and you're saying, hey, I'm giving of that 158 and 33, or 191,000 goes, can be used for other purposes.
Yeah, and like I said, we're just overseeing a function of the town, and that's it. I mean, we don't see anything.
I understand. I guess what that left me with is I took the 355, subtracted the 191, and said, well, he's gonna use it for some of these items that are in there. That left 164,000. So if I'm looking, and I'm talking roughly here, if you're if your total expenses are 262,000, what that'd leave you with is another 100,000, which you've gotta pull back from the town and say, hey, I gave you 190, but now I need 100 back in order to run my area. Is that roughly the way it works, or am I?
I'm trying to follow the breakdown, I think.
Well, you said your total revenue was 355,000.
Yep.
And then you said that 191,000, or, 158 plus 33, you gave, was free to go to the towns for other uses.
The only monies that I have access to for offsetting some of the costs associated with our department is the harbor service permits. We took in 125,000. Tempest Knob is a designated account strictly for the operation of the boat ramp that we can't take out. That's just an account that's been set up.
And how much is that?
Right now, last year it made $9,000, and that was on the sticker sales and
Yep.
cash that comes into the ramp.
Okay.
So between that and we can't do anything with. The tag fees, this one goes to offset costs for the town disposing, I'm assuming, of.
Yes, what happens with the tag fee is we collect $25, $5 goes into the general fund, and then the rest of the money goes to Marion.
So this
for
is the
disposal
total
of it.
amount.
Oh, that's the, okay.
For the stickers, so,
So-
I mean, in essence, the only monies that we have available to offset some costs would be the harbor service permits for the operation of the department. Because
Which
the recreational shellfish contribution to the shellfish propagation account, as well as the commercial, is strictly designated for that. It's not payroll, it's not, if I had to, the only portion I could pay for is if I had to hire, let's say we did a shellfish reel and we had to hire commercial fishermen to move product. It would just be paying outside vendors. I couldn't offset our costs with it.
So basically what I hear you saying is, against your expenses of 263,000, you've got 125 that can be used against that.
With portions of it. It would have to be broken down into percentages of job descriptions and how far we can't outstep what the operation is. We can't go into items such as, like I said, with the herring and the shellfish, so it would have to, what our duties entail, that's the only thing that money can offset. And I think it's only expenses associated with it.
Could, I don't know how to ask this, Gary, could that whole 125, if you worked on it, could you use that whole 125 against the 263,000?
Not all, I would say not all of it. I don't think we can go that far, because that would be covering, I think that would be stepping outside the scope of some of what the permit's about.
I understand.
I mean, I definitely think that, we could look at payroll issues, we can look at, some coverage there, but I don't think there's a.
What do you do, say you could,
Yep.
say you could use 100,000 of it, I'm just.
100, yeah, well, that's what we've done in the past.
All right, so say if that 262, you get 100,000 to offset. What happens to the other 25?
It would stay and it would turn over. It would carry over to, it just stays revolving in that account, so it would stay there, and then next year when we create the revenues, it just gets added into that figure.
How much is in that revolving account?
Right now, offhand, I think there's 67,000 if I ballpark it.
Isn't that also partially used for repairs though, too?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we cover costs of building docks. We pay for engine repairs. This year we had services done on our boats where, it's it's $2,500 to winterize our new whaler. It's,
Yeah,
you know,
So-
so we take on a lot of the larger items to offset costs with repairs and things of that nature do get covered through this account.
So basically, it's a reserve fund within another fund.
Yeah, I mean, one of the
That's just a
one of the
problem.
benefits to this is it takes the burden off of the capital planning, capital monies to.
Sure.
So I mean, on our end of it, it's great because we can fund things that, you know, you guys, I mean, you need an ambulance, so it's not going to us, but it's.
I guess my comment is that if you were to spend the whole $125 to offset your budget, and then suddenly
You have a problem.
a repair to the
Correct.
pier that had to be done, we would go to town meeting trying to get the money.
And I mean, we do have
We'd
projects.
have a deficit.
And we do have projects, obviously, that are, obviously, we need some fundings for. So I mean, I don't wanna totally wipe out things that we can potentially move. I understand we're
I
at a
don't,
tough
I
time.
don't want you to.
I completely, I understand what you're saying with where we could, how far we could push it to cover some of the costs, especially right now, because I know we're in a tough time, and I think that's all part of really trying to crunch it. And I know like I said, we're gonna contribute 50,000 to the request, so it's, you know, we're talking 210. And then fall town meeting, obviously we'll have if you look on the sheet, we'll see an increase on, what we're gonna be making. And without adding in, and it's not a lot of money, estimated other revenues for fines and tackle removal, we looked at about 16,000. And those were numbers from what we have on a yearly basis of trying to look at people who don't pay, who, you know, violate the stuff. So I'm assuming we're gonna carry those same numbers going into this year. But I mean, next year we're ballpark figure of 167,000 coming in, so we've increased it by 42. But what you're saying, yes, I think if we can come up with what we can cover and what we can't cover, and I'll work with the Department of Revenue person that we had at our Harbor Association meeting. And maybe she can give us some better ideas on how far we can stretch it. I'm not opposed to trying to help out as much as possible. I don't wanna see anybody struggling here.
Gary, I'm not trying
Yep,
to.
no, I absolutely.
To empty your till completely,
Nope.
that's not where I'm
Well,
coming
you know,
from.
with tough times, we have to do what we have to do.
But I am obviously trying to
Yep.
see if there's some funds that can be.
And, I think there are a few things that we do need to look at, and I know we have surveys coming up with parking programs and things of that nature, and residential on-street parking. If we look into areas that need, permits to park on town properties, this could be a potential of boosting that number of those permits. I think you could probably get an additional 50 to 70,000 out of it if you really put a program in place that works. I know we talked about kiosks, we talked about all sorts of things, and it's just, we just need to obviously do it, but.
Our town administrator has his back turned to us and is talking over on the other side of the
He
room.
went to get me coffee, don't pick on him.
But I hope you will talk with him
Yep.
about this, because we certainly are in desperate search for additional revenue,
Yep.
and that would be very helpful.
Our fees are pretty close to surrounding towns, and I did a breakdown when we did propose the fees to show that we're kind of middle of the road with all the other towns at this point. Actually, our dump sticker and beach sticker is a little higher. I mean, it's still good compared to Plymouth, which is paying almost $200 for their dump sticker. But they have a different set of circumstances over there.
Yep. No, since I'm.
Seems like there's money in trash, I don't know.
Since
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
a purchaser of both, I understand, but,
I do have small questions regarding on some of our line items too, and I don't know if you can answer it, just, maybe I'm just sounding crazy, but like on my line item of sewer, I'm a town department that's paying another town department, and I mean, if we're going to the points of this, because I called municipal maintenance also and asked them about the sewer costs, and they obviously are budgeting sewer costs out of their budgets too. Why are we budgeting sewer costs out of each of our budgets when why don't we just put this money towards sewer department, it's
The
budget
sewer,
itself?
the sewer is an enterprise fund and
But-
operates as an independent organization.
Yep,
It bills the schools, it bills the town, it bills.
gotcha.
Right, we have, as sewer users as a town, for town municipal buildings, we have to pay in just like anyone else who has a toilet.
No, but is that, is that an option of us where we can eliminate that line item, where we just
No.
designate that money to the sewer department?
No, you have to pay it.
I just saw it, I'm like, department paying another department, so.
Yeah, no, each of the schools has to pay based on the number of toilets and all that. It's
Gotcha.
all done that way. And it's, if nothing else, a lot.
It's not a lot of money,
Shall
I
we
just,
say
I'm sitting there looking at
It's
it.
the politically safe way of doing it.
Yeah,
you know?
I hear you.
So if you want a second home, then what can I say? That's $600.
I just figured it was an easy way to.
Pardon?
Ask one question.
Can you ask a question?
Yes, Dave.
Does he remember the?
No,
We are in committee of the whole, so yes, you can.
could he?
Yeah, no, you.
Gary, which fund does the money come out that ends up in municipal maintenance for beach cleaning?
That's the boat excise tax that goes to the waterways account, which we have set up.
So that, just so everybody understands, that averages about $30,000 a year.
What's that?
The beach cleanup for municipal maintenance, it comes through one of Gary's funds, so that's 30 to 33,000, at least $30,000 a year, which he doesn't have use of also, which is supplementing municipal maintenance.
I think definitely with the increase in revenues that we're doing, I mean, that's something, we're, I'm more than willing to work with Derek on whatever he wants. It's not, there's no question there. And I think that over time, I can't say it this year, but going into next year and the following years with our breakdown of what we need for funds for items as well as offsetting some of the line items in our budget, I think I've got a 5-year breakdown that we're putting together, and it does show what you're talking about is between $70,000 to $100,000 insert into the budget as it goes through. So I definitely think we can make some dents, but we can't see it this year. You'll see 50,000 right now, right off the bat, but other than that, I think going into fall town meeting and then the next spring, we'll start doing something.
I just want to apologize to Mr. Buckminster and Marietta for not being here during the presentation, and just so everybody knows on there, if there's anybody that's more active or progressive, I don't know about, whether it's sending me ideas on the weekend at 8 p.m. or just calling me up, but I appreciate Gary's help and all the things he's bringing forward.
We just found 300,000 for you, but don't worry about it.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Oh,
question
no,
I'll ask
now,
Gary.
we're in the committee of the whole, so you just jump right in.
Thanks.
How are you?
Very good. Gary, on this, sewer problem that we recently had for the shellfish, you think that's gonna, that won't carry to the summer where that would hurt our licensing? You think that's
No,
a
it's
short-term thing already?
It's already reopened.
Okay.
Yep, it
I'm
was,
sorry, I didn't realize that.
The spill took place, I called it an undetermined amount because when we arrived on scene, there was a flow of water, we didn't know how long it was going
Yeah.
for. Marine Fisheries has to act it's a raw sewer issue,
Sure.
so they do a full closure of the bay, and that Monday and Tuesday they did testing. Wednesday by noon, we got results back, which were fine.
I just wanted to make
which was
sure it
great.
wouldn't affect
Yeah,
us
no,
financially in the, okay,
No, we're doing good on it.
thank you.
Carolyn, do you want-
No, I just wanted to point out, make an observation that we finally had, I don't want to say good news, but we had a department that's in here, working, functional, and aside from the big capital item that we can't fund for fixing the pier, it looks nice. It's the first feel-good moment of the day, so thank you very much. I don't expect that there will be any more of those, so I'm going to enjoy it while I have it.
And all I wanted to do was steal all your money.
That's usually my job. I was very glad you were doing that for me,
Like I said,
I'm saving it to rebuild the onset pier, though, so we'll talk about that.
I really do feel that we have a good team here, and working with Derek is great. Really, it's a breath of fresh air being able to approach him with the things that we have going on. Doesn't like it, tells you no. He likes it, says yes.
Have your revenues increased by 20,000?
They've floated around a little bit. It will be increasing by over 40 by next, hopefully by fall, and that depends on how.
By the time this budget is ready, we're ready to start doing
Yeah,
this,
which
right?
book is it here? Hold on a second. bear with me one second.
Like,
Put everything away.
we're talking 2014, your fees will be up.
They might, they've been pretty consistent within a few $1,000s, depending on, where did my paperwork go? Caught me off guard. There it is.
What I'm looking at is 2014, and we have an increase in revenues that exceeds $20,000.
The paper I gave you?
2014, your revenues exceed,
Right, but is that the sheet that I just handed to you? Or is that in the,
general
the
question,
general?
I just came up with.
It's 2014 it should because of the HSP.
Yeah. Well, there should be an increase, yeah, definitely on the HSP money, but I don't know,
About how
are you
much?
talking about a $20,000 increase on my line item here?
No, in
'Cause
your
that's what I'm-
revenues, in your revenues,
That's what I'm looking at, but I don't see that here.
for your permit fees and everything.
Yeah, the
It should
only-
be actually 40.
The only permit fees that we've gone up on is the harbor service
I
permit money.
understand that, I'm just wondering if we
Yeah, let me-
quantify what the impact of that would be.
It should start April 1st, 2013, and go
Right.
forward.
Yeah, it's a $40,000
About
actually
40,000.
increase, yep.
Why are we
Harbors,
beating ourselves to death by not applying it against the the difference between this year's 242 and next year's 262? I mean, there might be a reason, but I'm just saying that, you know,
We could definitely, I mean, it can
One
be
of the few
applied,
departments
it can
going
be
up,
applied
right?
by next year's, going into it, but,
I mean, you know I'm a member of the Gary Buckminster fan club, but
yeah, thank you.
the other side is right now, you are looking to be one of the few departments that is going
Yep.
up.
Well,
Right,
and hopefully we
you're
can,
Going up for a reason, and part of it being.
is primarily the waterway stuff, is the major, but,
All right,
you know,
so
if there's a
just thought
change,
to what Sam was
I
talking.
still feel that you can, the revenues of the dump sticker, the slash dump sticker, beach sticker, with a residential parking program, through the side streets in Onset and Wareham and areas that are high demand of parking, you probably will see those numbers.
Yeah, that's a different story. I guess
But,
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying
that's
is
something that has to
Sam,
be-
Sam's looking for 100,000, I'm only looking for 20.
Well, we can meet you with
It could
50
go-
right
it could go either
We can
way.
meet you with 50, and then we can go into another fashion here right now.
I'm ignoring him and saying, this is a way.
That's
All right,
amazing, yeah.
any other questions?
So
Anyone
you're-
else?
the actual budget's
just,
supposed to be
just
up.
quick, harbor service fee is mooring fees?
Correct, yep. Yep, any vessel that's in the waterways, has to pay it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Here you go, thanks.
Okay. And then what I prepared is partly copied from the Mass Department of Revenue's regulations that my department needs to meet as part of our responsibility. And my goal for the town is to make sure that we comply with all Department of Regulations and that we have the manpower to do so. And as you know, my department's been short a data collector most of the time since I've been here. So I thought it would be the clearest way to explain that aspect of it is to give you what the Department of Regulation, DOR and DLS, Division of Local Services, regulations are, and where we aren't meeting them. And where that will come in is when we come to another reval year, is that we may not get certified unless we have met these obligations. We're running a little bit behind, but I'm not in an issue that I'm at all concerned at this point. Our department, or my department, is in charge for collecting as much revenue via assessments as we can. That means we need to collect every single permit or aspect of a permit that's applied for that attributes to value. And that's one area where I'm asking for some consideration in an assistant assessor data collector along with me who can get out to collect those, whether it's via a person or a contract company. However we do it, Derek and I come to the conclusion is going to be the most financially feasible. But raising the assessments is going to help to lower the tax base. But as far as gaining in revenue, the things that I feel we could be doing a better job on is more in the field, which when you have just myself, I'm not in the field as much. I'm out right now doing abatements, and it's amazing what I see out there that if we had field reviewing,
on a regular basis, which would take an assistant data collector or a data collector to assist in just driving the streets and doing the review process that you'll read about, the field review, quality review, and is captured during the building permit segment of the department, and also cyclical review. The only place we're really, really behind is cyclical review, and it's only at this point a year behind, which isn't a lot. Cyclical is just picking a map and doing it, just reviewing the whole thing, inside, outside, as much as you can, and selecting an area that where we have least been in for other reasons. The tax,
And you have to do X amount?
we have to do 10% or 9% every year, so that within a 10-year period of time, every property has been visited at least on the outside with measurements and condition, and decks that we don't know about, second stories we don't know about, garage units we don't know about, picked up and added to our base, which will help raise revenue in the long run. One of the things that I requested and the board approved and was discussed at length with Derek and also John Foster, that we implement an existing law for income and operating statements, is that all right? That go out to the big box, the class 300 and 400, which are your big box commercial and industrial. And they also go out to the what's called a 111, which are your large apartment complexes. Your large apartment complexes can, if they don't return their income and operating statement, which gives me the numbers to adequately assess them, and they're compiled over years and years and in our database, and they're used when they negotiate with us in the appellate tax court, or when we have any abatement filing just at the local level. But the largest amount would be collected between the 300 and 400, your big box. There's a $250 penalty that can be applied through state law 38D to the company that did not file their income and operating statement. And that penalty, as I've reviewed with John Foster, would go on the tax bill. It comes off first, and we've worked an equitable situation out, that it would not be a lot more work. I'm willing to assume some of the work. Some of the towns that I've checked on when they've initiated this, and even the following years, without the amount of tax base that we have, without the amount of commercial tax base, let me preface that, is between 75,000 and 100,000 their first year. And then it may drop to, I've heard 36,000, 40,000, and some big box stores, it just figures in, it's easier for them, and they don't want you to have their numbers, to just pay the $250 penalty.
We don't currently do this. but
No,
we're gonna
it was
start doing
it was
Or
not
revenue.
being done. It was not being implemented. The letter that will go out this year with the income and operating statements has that included in it. It'll involve a first and second notice, but I think that's very doable. And then the fine goes on their tax bill, so it becomes part of the process. Oh, I thought you were gonna ask me a question. The smaller one, this will not affect 3 families, 2 families. When we say income and operating, we don't even send them out to 3 families, 2 families. The 111s and 112s, which are your bigger ones like Cranberry Manor, all your larger 40B complexes, they're primarily, would be only a $50 fine. That's just the way the DOR broke it. But the class 300 and 400, large commercial and industrial, is a $250 fine. That fund goes, if I'm not mistaken, that money goes as a penalty into the general fund. Right? I think so, yes. I think that's where we decided it did. It doesn't go directly to my department to spend. It comes into the town as a penalty.
With the penalties and interest lines in there.
So that's the one thing that I'm hoping. There aren't many ways you can come out and just say we're going to increase revenue from my department without getting hit with, what do you mean you're going to increase our assessments? Because that is not the way, as you probably all know, being on the finance committee, that the two don't walk hand in hand. I have a staff right now, 3 full-time clerks who've been there quite a long time, and 1 administrative assistant who's been there 40-some-odd years, who is my right arm as far as she really runs that front office and can handle any issue that comes through the door. We no longer have 2 other data collectors that were part of the team when I first came on board. That was changed with budget a couple years ago, and now I would really like to put in at least a part-time assistant, more probably a full-time assistant. One of my concerns as a private business owner is that in a town this size, you have one of me. I'm the only one in that department that knows your values, knows your system, that how it runs, how it's creating, how it's generating it, and not only that, anything about values. There is no one trained in that department on values. So that if anything should happen to me, I'm out, I'm this, I leave, whatever, you don't have no one to back it up. That's very secondary in my mind to what the benefit of having that person there and the money that they can capture in just picking up the data we're supposed to be picking up.
Is that person in this request here, in this budget?
I had it in as a part-timer. I minus 2%ed my budget because I thought we could try it. And then, Derek?
Yeah, the administration budget has the full-time employee in there because it is my belief that if something were to happen to one of our staff members on this level, we need something to come in. This is one of the most important departments when it comes to setting our tax rate. Also with that person, they can, as well as learning and knowing the department, they will also be able to go out there for cyclical inspections. So you'll see a drastic increase in travel reimbursement. It's not listed under gas, diesel, and oil because we will now, this year, we have a vehicle for them to share as well, thanks to town meetings. It was sort of a breakdown of it there. That is a large increase, but especially since they're going to be making up some time, I expect we're going to see them puttering all over town.
And it pays itself back with picking up information in the field. The other line item there that's large is the $8,000. That is our RRC. I'll never think of his name. Real estate research. He collects and takes care of all of our personal property. His company does. We send out the forms of list. He gets them back. He handles it all from there. And he typically, well, I've never known him not to bring in more than his $8,000 in what we pay to him. Last year, I think it was 15 or 13,000 back in new growth that he collected out there to increase our base. So that 8,000 is a non-negotiable number, and it's difficult to bring that in-house. Personal property is a whole different animal than in training and aspect beyond my scope and most assessors' scope.
If it essentially pays for itself, give or take a little more, a little less, it's still, in the end, it's cheaper than hiring a part-time employee.
It's a whole special niche.
If you could find one that
Does it, yeah. So that's where I stand. I'm just hopeful that we can get an ad in and hire an assistant so that we can get back on track and get the base up.
I'd just like to add compliments to your staff because that is one of the departments that I use in my day job. And they are wonderful, very professional, very informative, and
I get more
appreciative of that.
compliments on this particular staff from 3 different staffs I've worked with than anywhere I've been. And I too will compliment them, and it's amazing what several of them can do and produce.
Could you just address the tax maps? We heard a little bit about that with the GIS and Matt, but we're really uninitiated.
Matt did go into GIS.
He did.
I honestly don't know how the town has been certified the last several times because your maps are extremely outdated. Every year you're supposed to add to your map any new subdivision, any new road, any new this. So anybody can pick up the map and see it. I don't think that subdivisions in the last I'm gonna go out and say 5 years have been added in. So you have maps that we can't, that aren't usable, they're not functioning. What the DOR wants to see, and what we should have, is a grid that you go out and you look at the map and identify a neighborhood. I value by neighborhoods, and a neighborhood can be all over town, and then it has a different factor, but we were criticized for having too many neighborhoods. They need to be delineated. That'll come through the process of my people and me in the field. But right now, we don't even have an index on our map. So if you wanted to know where something was, you have to go to the field card. This doesn't sound cumbersome, but it is when you're trying to run a review. You have to go and find where that is. Then some of our maps are not even legible due to the density of the neighborhood. You can't see it. GIS, I went about 10 years ago to school for GIS. It is a fabulous and almost a necessary product of this age to have the GIS. What the cost is versus that, you still have to start with a map. And right now, we don't have a map, so a good, reliable map.
How do we get that?
Well, I think that in the past, Matt's handled that through Circle, and we haven't been able to get to him and get to back and forth because the state stepped in and said, we're going to do GIS, which they did throughout the state and bring it up to a certain level. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the level number, which means how many attributes are on the map. Is it just the diagram of the lot, diagram of the house in the lot? Is it the lot lines, the street names? So what level they brought it up to. And it was supposed to be free back to us. Matt and I met with a company that came in that was to be our company to deal with, and they wanted an additional $32,000 to create the maps for us.
To put the street names on it? Okay, that
No,
is the part.
not just to give us what the state has. So it kind of got stopped there, and with everything else going on, it got dropped. It should be a team of the people who need to use the maps, deciding what should be on the maps, and then we need to move on from there and maybe interview a couple of companies. But GIS in the long run is cheaper because you make your own maps. You can create whatever segment of a map you want. If we had, and I wondered why we don't, a master plan of your plan for Wareham, and segment plans. It is so much easier to identify this. For me, in assessing, I can move around much faster on a map that's accurate and figure out neighborhoods and values than I can in a paper map, but I won't let go of my paper maps. But first we need to start with a base map and then see what's happened. So it's time, we need time. Matt and I need time to sit down and then figure out who else wants to be involved in the map so it's not. You need some consistency. You haven't had an assessor that was involved in the mapping, and I'm very involved in mapping myself, so I want to push it. It's not a line item cost on me because I'm not sure where we are financially to do that, but we still need to do some maps.
You mentioned that, or said that if something happened to you right now, that there would be no knowledge of where we are as a town. I hope you have good records somewhere.
There's very good records. In fact, you had to check them at one point, yes. Everything is in the system. It's not that, it's bringing somebody new in to understand Wareham values, how you assess, the rules of the game here.
Understood.
No, the records, it's all in the system. My records are all available. They have to be available every year to get certified. We're certified every year as a department through the Department of Revenue, before we can set a tax rate. So yes, and there's books of growth, there's how to collect, we have manuals, it's manpower. But also, most assessors departments have two people, and I'm not asking for a second person, that are more involved in the value end of it. you want your values to be equitable and somebody who's on tune to the sales, and right now, we don't have that. That's what I meant there. Yeah, there's excellent records. I hope that you're pleased with them, and you're welcome to come in and review them with me.
Thank you.
Other questions? So to recap, you're looking to add $20,000 with the potential of increasing the amount of property that's assessed, which is a revenue opportunity under growth, correct?
Yes,
Okay, sounds good to me. As long as you get 20,000.
as long as I get what?
As long as you make the 20,000. No, it
I
sounds like
have to
it's a long
calculate
overdue.
that back, yeah. Well, some of that, I mean, that's paper.
All right, then, as a recap, that's what we're looking to do, is to really get the assessments where they belong.
And when we
what
get
happens,
into.
happens, and it will fall as new growth in the
Yeah.
revenue line. Okay. If nobody else has any questions, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you, Derek.
First of all, I had 3 separate handouts. I'm not sure if you requested the organizational chart for administration, but I've enclosed the organizational chart for the Treasurer Collector's Office. In the Treasurer Collector's Office, we have myself, the Assistant Treasurer Collector, and 3 Department Assistant 3s. It's the same personnel that we had last year. Prior to that, we had 1 additional Clerk 3, and her position was dissolved not this past year, but the year prior. There's a spreadsheet that I have that I used showing the level funded department request, a 2% decrease and a 2% increase, which is this spreadsheet right here. The first column matches what I've copy of the administrator's budget. The major changes, the salaries are the same, those are the contractual amounts on the top line. The repairs, you'll notice on the first line, repairs to office equipment, maintenance of office equipment has been reduced from last year by $1,000. What that was a photocopier lease. Mr. Sullivan has been looking at the leases for the town, and our office will be purchasing a small personal type photocopier. We were paying $1,600 a year just for the lease, and now we're just going to be utilizing a $300 or $400 copier and utilizing the copier upstairs, the more expensive, powerful copier in the mail room for reports and more professional reports. The payroll processing, the second line is the payroll processing services. That's an increase of $3,520. We went out to bid this year, 3-year contract. The low bidder was Harper's Payroll, and the amounts were $43,520 for each year for the next 3 years. The next line, land court fees. Each petition that we file is $590 per petition, and you can see across the board that's where the 2% increase, 2% decrease, where it varies. Most of the money will come in. If we were to be cut 2%, you'd see the petitions go down from 21 to 8, and if we had a 2% increase, we would file an additional 13 petitions. Land court filing, the Plymouth County recording fees, $17,325. That's an estimate. Those are new tax title cases that we enter, and we had approximately 220 this year. I added 5 to that, it's 225. At $77 per lien. Printing and mailing, the additional $1,000, I believe we had $11,500 last year. That is for copies. We're starting something called bill presentation or presentment. It's a copy of your real estate tax bill. You'll be able to go online and get an actual copy of your tax bill. Exactly what you receive in the mail, you'll be able to go online. That costs about $900 a year to get the discs, to send that to our vendor to put those online. Office supplies, that's $4,080. We spend that. Typically, that's what we spend on the paper, toner, ink, receipt books, which we pay. We purchase for all the departments. We're responsible for those books. And that's almost $2,000 of that right there. Advertising has been going up. At one time, we're paying $2,000 or $3,000 using one of the local newspapers. That paper is no longer in existence. Now we're paying $7,000 to the next highest bidder. Employee bonds, that's to cover us for, cover the assistant and myself. It's required by law. $1,050 was the amount last year, and it's been staying pretty constant. The next item is for travel and conferences. That is for one employee to attend Treasurer Collector School at UMass Amherst, and that should be our assistant this year. Mileage is for various conferences, going back and forth to the bank and issues like that. It's $50 a month. And the dues and membership are just the state and county memberships. It doesn't include any other associations. That's just to get us, or to keep our credentials. We're both, the assistant and myself, we're both accredited collectors and treasurers. And that is the total for the budget. The main, as I said, the main increase, the $3,520 payroll processing fee, and there were some very minor additional increases over last year's budget. This is the, excuse me?
Question, I'm looking at the treasurer collector budget that was the original.
Yeah, we had, the bids came in after we submitted the original documentation.
All right, there was a line called land court fees for $11,160. Am I missing that somewhere?
No, it's the third line down.
Okay.
I think the way it's set up on the town system, it's the last line item. On ours, it's the third. On our spreadsheet, it's the third line item.
Yeah, it's 20,000.
Just so you're aware, that line item that you mentioned, we now have approximately 260 accounts in the hands of the attorneys for tax title. Yeah, and there's about 120 accounts that are in land court facing foreclosure.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at something that says department request 20,060. I'm seeing something here where it says 11,000.
20,000 plus 2%.
And we ended up on the 12,000 for now. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's a 2% increase, 2% decrease.
Yep. Yep.
Since the focus of our discussion today has been on increasing revenues and not trying to cut spending that isn't there to cut, you just mentioned, 120 properties in tax title foreclosure.
There's over 600, closer to 700 properties in tax title.
In tax title, but you've actually pushed.
There's over 260 in the hands of our attorneys.
Okay. At one point, before I took my vacation from the Finance Committee, we had hired a law firm who was going after collections, and that seemed to be going very well at that point. Are we still doing that?
Same firm, and it is,
Same firm,
yes.
it's still the same, that
Yep.
that is our system now, so.
That's it.
Could you repeat the figures again? How many are in
Tax title?
tax title? What do you mean by that?
Tax title is if this year you don't pay your taxes, let's say 2012, you didn't pay your real estate taxes, or you have a balance on your real estate taxes, you would get a demand. And we send a notice to you saying you're going to be advertised in the newspaper, you need to pay within so many days. If you didn't pay that at that time, we would record a lien on your property. That's the $77 fee. Now, years go by and you haven't paid your taxes, and it increases over time. You get to be about, and I'm not going to say the figure because people actually ask me what the figure is before we enter into, hand it over to the attorneys or put it in land court. But there's a certain dollar amount that we come up to, and we'll hand it over to the attorneys. If you don't pay our attorneys or make a payment agreement at that time, we'll file a petition with the land court to foreclose on your property. And we have 4 of those this year. We foreclosed, we own a house, a home. It was vacant at the time that we foreclosed on it. We own another property that has a dwelling on it. It's in pretty poor condition. And we own 2 other properties that we foreclosed on. And we can sell those at any time. We can have a public auction, which we're planning for this spring. What we're hoping to do is, last year you gave me some money to chase after an old abandoned subdivision. That's in land court. At that time, they told me we could probably, we could foreclose on it within a year. They've run into problems. I'm hoping that we'll get a final judgment on all of the properties sometime soon, but I don't want to, you know, that's a property that we could sell at auction for a decent sum of money.
I'm gonna show my ignorance of town accounting. When you send out a tax bill, you don't call that collection until you get the cash? Or
It's a receivable.
it's a receivable, so you pick it up as, basically as, for a company, it would be income.
Yeah, it's outstanding. If you ask for our receivable balances, it's the same with, it's off the general ledger.
Yeah,
So let's say you commit to us $20 million.
yeah,
When the final bills go out and we collect it, we'll collect over 96% by June 30th.
yep,
And then prior to it leaving the tax receivable and going into tax title, we'll collect another 1.5% maybe. When it goes into tax title, it becomes a tax title receivable.
yep.
Now it's all transferred over. Everything that's collected from that point is a tax title. When we foreclose on a property, it leaves tax title and goes into tax foreclosure. And in the tax title, you're also not allowed to budget. You're not allowed to say, although we collected, let's see, I have those figures here. Well, I can tell you what they are. We collected over $500,000 last year. The year before that, we collected over $1 million. And this year, we're on target for altogether, district tax, sewer, CPA, Title V, everything together. Probably another $600,000. You can't budget that. You can't estimate it. State won't allow it. So when you're setting your budget, that's additional money we collect every year. You're not allowed to budget for it.
Do you want to know
But we
where
can
the
spend
second part of our free cash came from?
It's part of the free cash, well, it's the free
But we
cash.
can
Right.
spend it,
But
we can't budget it.
Here's the thing, when you look at your budget, when Mr. Sullivan submits this budget, it's gonna say the tax levy is X number of dollars, $20 million.
Yeah,
We won't collect $20 million in the fiscal year. We'll collect over 96% of it. That makes up the difference. So now it becomes, it leaves that real estate tax receivable. And we'll collect additional funds that will help balance that out through tax title. And it's a 16% interest on top of it. So the penalties and interest that we get from tax title is substantial. Attorney fees, we get all the attorney fees back, we get all the filing fees back, that all comes back into.
is this money that can be used for capital items later on in the year?
Becomes part of your free cash. You won't use it until next year, but when we close out the year, the additional funds, what you could do, if you wanted to set a policy, and we've discussed this in the past, you can consider your one-time money. You can set a policy and you'll say, we'll take 25% of our one-time money and set that aside and put it in stabilization, or use it for capital debt, or use it for something else. An internal policy, and you just don't touch it. You just, here's the 20, I mean, you can spend it. There's nothing saying you can't spend that money, but if you have a policy not to spend that, a lot of cities and towns do that, because they don't want that to become part of their operating budget.
And it makes a lot of sense.
If you're counting on it, if we don't collect this year, a couple of years ago, we collected well over $1 million, and we sold $1 million worth of property at auction, and it was spent that year.
I would believe that. But it might be some help, obviously, in capital items later on this year. Can it be spent, say, at the time of the fall town meeting?
If you had certified free cash, sure.
Yeah, it's the free cash. That will never be designated as that type of item. It all falls to the free cash. You have to follow the normal free cash rules on that.
John, on, you're saying that we have 4 properties that we can sell right at the moment, did I hear you say that right?
We actually have a lot more than 4, but
Okay.
we've had an auction, we had an auction a couple of years ago, and a lot of properties didn't sell.
Okay. Well, you know what, let's not worry about numbers. if we had some sort of sale in the recent time, what kind of number do you think we could raise? A rough guess, even be on the lower end, that would help the town.
Probably around $200,000, somewhere around there.
Couple $100,000 if we
If
had.
that subdivision,
Well,
if we
okay, so
foreclose on that subdivision, a lot more.
that's a key, that's a key point.
Right, that's not
And
including
you
that.
expect that to be recent, in the future,
I would
reasonable
say,
time?
I was told it should have happened already.
Okay,
I would say within the next year. it should take
within the
place.
next year, okay, so. I'm looking at seeing that if we could do something, to help us, right away, it would be, 200,000 doesn't seem like enough for all the effort that you'd have to put into it, you know what I mean? If this subdivision is big money, it would be worth waiting to do it all, I suppose. Okay, thank you.
The other increase that, when I had the budget meeting with the department heads, I'd asked them to look at their fees and such and see if they're in line with other communities. And Mr. Foster brought forth that the MLC fees were about half the surrounding communities. We were, once again, one of the last ones to bring it up to date. And we've increased that from $25 to $50, which should bring in an additional $25,000 in fiscal 14. Actually, the additional revenue this year as well, too.
That went into effect, that new rate increase went into effect January 1st, and we're already collecting those fees.
Is that the only fee that we feel that you can go up on in the office? Any other fees in your office that are low, John?
Yeah, there's, the fees that we have, a fee for release is a state law, $4. There's certain fees, very minimal in my office.
Okay.
The penalties are all by law, Mass General law.
Right, those you can't mess with, those are what you can do, okay.
No.
Excuse me, John, when you do the release fee, do we file them from here, or do you send them to us?
No, they go to the taxpayers, actually. And
Okay,
they-
good.
Yeah. The last, you want to go over the last set of spreadsheets, you can just, that's for your own reference. The color, the different colors, that's all the town's debt right there, all summarized on 4 pages. And it starts with the earliest date of issue. You can see those on the top are running short on years to pay. That's what we actually pay in debt. The yellow line items are town, general fund. The blue is sewer, the orange is Title V, and the green is CPA. And each one of those is summarized on the second page. For 2014, principal was $690, interest $86,000 for general fund debt. Sewer principal was $2,516,253.28, and the interest was $678,094.81. And then we have the items by the CPA and the Title V. As you can see also on the Title V, we don't pay any interest on those loans. Those are 0% interest. And that's handled by CETA. But that'll give you, that's something that we put this in the annual report every year. I just liked it better. We picked up a new cheap color printer and it looks a lot better in color, so I printed one out. It's easier to read. But that's for your own information.
Notice he gave it a try here with the finance committee.
Yes.
See if
I
we
like
can
it.
handle the
See if we
pressure.
can handle it. Now he's blushing.
And I think you have, the other item I had was retirement, and that is it's set by the county. It's already established. It's a one-time payment in July. It went up from $2,734,000 up to $2,841,000. So it's a $100,000 plus change, and you can probably expect that again for next year.
You're talking about the Plymouth County?
Plymouth County contribution.
That's not a 5% discount for paying it up front, right?
John,
They still haven't adjusted the rates, which is a good thing.
John, I have a question for you. I don't know if you can answer that. How do we compare to others with our debt load compared to our revenue?
We actually do get information on that, and we're relatively low as far as what we've borrowed on the town side.
Okay.
Sewer Enterprise Fund, I don't have any numbers on that, but on the town side, we're low. And Moody's gives a report, which we were trying to follow. That's when you were trying to set aside money in stabilization. ending up with a good free cash, which we had this year. There are other factors that go into it, stability in key management positions, financial policies, all different things that we were working on or we have been working on throughout the years. Current bond rating's A1, which is not bad. It's actually pretty good. It was higher than our last rating. I think we were BAA at one point, and then it went up when they recalculated the way they were going to handle communities and municipalities.
Okay.
We have been borrowing off of State House notes recently. The next time we go out to Moody's, I don't know if what we've done on the reserves or I'm concerned that the next time we go out for a rate change, we might be reduced because our reserves haven't been brought up to speed, and we've had a lot of turnover, and we're not really what I would consider a stable community yet.
Okay.
So we're borrowing off of State House notes.
Okay. So then, no, thank you. It's all right.
Our town number is only 2.9 million.
Excuse
Our
me?
town number, out of the 40,600,000, the town is only 2,000,009. The sewer, the Title V, and the CPA is where the money really is.
Absolutely.
The CPA is a separate issue. all
Sewer's
itself.
huge. Sewer
It's the
is,
sewer.
we're still paying off the plant, the upgrades to the plant, all the, and let me just, while you brought that up, if you look at the blue line items, anytime you see MWPAT, that's Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust, that's money that's borrowed through the trust for, it's also borrowed for Title V, but it's borrowed for all the sewer projects, and most of the sewer projects, that's when we get that special rate for borrowing. I have a separate spreadsheet that I have provided to Mr. Sullivan, which breaks down what projects are on sewer betterment and which aren't. So a lot of that money that you see, the betterment should be helping to pay that off. We collect, I think the commitment from the assessors this year was $1,250,000. And like I said, we'll collect 96% of that by June 30th. So that's money that goes against their debt.
Hey, Frank, do you feel then that, when you're a better numbers guy than I am, or through John, that we'd be wrong in borrowing for capital improvements?
We have been. Last
Yeah.
2 years.
I know we have been, but I'm saying, you think we could do more and
Well-
still feel comfortable?
What you should do, or what you should look at,
Yeah.
if you take this sheet
Yep.
and follow the yellow, where it says town principal and interest on page 2, follow that across,
I see it, yep.
and see where it goes from 690 in principal to 660, 511. That includes your 2 last capital improvements from July of 2012 and the one that we anticipate going out in the near future. That's the last set of the school roof repairs and all the other, the 3 used vehicles and some of the other stuff. That's already included in those numbers.
Okay.
If you get into 2018, it drops by $150,000.
Yeah.
And then right across the row. So if you start planning for your capital items on those years, you can start borrowing some decent money and remaining stagnant or constant on the amount of money you're spending in debt.
Okay.
As a wise man has once said in a few of our meetings, though,
Yes.
our credit limit's not our problem. All right, the amount of money we could supposedly could borrow is not the problem. The problem is trying to pay the current year payments against that debt. All right, and 5 years from now, we're gonna look really good, we're only gonna have payments of $90,000. The
Yeah.
problem is, the next 5 years,
We gotta get through
and
them
we will
first.
pick up some, particularly the next 2 years. And then, so, yeah, we're in a bind, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, as long as we understand that the police and kids are gonna have to walk for 5 years.
You're also the wrong guy. I walk to school every day.
20 miles each way,
No,
right? All
no,
uphill?
no,
Yeah,
about a mile.
You have
About a
question-
mile I
You have a
walk.
question from the public, first one today.
I walked about a mile
Thank
back
you,
and
Mr.
forth.
Chair.
Mrs. Slavin?
I just want this committee and Mr. Foster and Mr. Sullivan to know that CPA will be putting a article forward at this spring town meeting to pay the debt for Bryant Farm and Tremont Mail. There will be an article, I believe Bryant Farm is now just over 7,000 a year, and Tremont Mail has just dropped below 100,000. So that will be a article to pay for it from our FY'14 estimated revenue.
Excuse me, you say to pay it off?
No, to pay this year's, we
Oh.
cannot prepay.
Okay, oh, all right. So
But
that's what I
that
was gonna
pays
say, so it's-
FY'14 debt payment will be sponsored by a CPA article.
The 13 budget, you included that. the fact that they
They've
were
paid their own
making-
debt all the way through that, all the way through this.
Okay, so you've already accounted for it in your 14.
That's the green line item that you see
No,
there.
I'm saying your 14, in your budget,
Mhm.
all right? Like when we did 2013, you deducted what,
Yes,
right? Did you do that in 14 as well?
yes, if you,
Okay,
on the first page, those green lines that are going across,
yes.
that's CPA debt. See where it's labeled CPA 1 and CPA 2?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go down to the second page, it summarizes it.
Okay, because in the past you had put the full amount in there in case it didn't.
Yeah, what
It wasn't
happened
authorized
before,
or there
yeah.
was a problem.
What-
Could you
yeah,
change
the-
that?
The only problem was, the way it was done in the past, I've submitted these same spreadsheets for years to administration, and we need to make sure the debt's paid no matter what. If they've always voted to pay it, but if they don't vote to pay it, I still need to write a check or
Yes.
send a wire. So we've always included it. CPA or the CPC voted it for the fall, the money in the fall. So it's in my budget in May. It would have to be reduced from my budget in October, and then the article from CPC would cover the debt. They've always paid their own debt. There hasn't been a
Oh, I
problem.
know that. So my
Yeah.
question, is last year we adjusted, instead of them being in October, they did it in April.
Yes, and that's
Right,
actually good
That allowed
because.
us to
right.
reduce your expenses for debt.
Right, and it helps
Right,
out with the
What
budget.
she's saying, we can do that again this year in confidence.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, and it's already included in the numbers.
Yes, it
It's
is.
not like her statement just found it's $100,000.
No, it's included in those
It's already
numbers.
in
I
there.
got excited over that. Okay.
Yeah, see, Marilyn
Stop
is,
trying to find stuff.
Well, my-
I'm not the least bit worried, the chief told me he'd take care of it. Mrs. Slavin.
Now, excuse me, I now have my affordable housing trust on it, my hat on. There was a subdivision in which I don't believe the town owned title to it that could very well be, Affordable Housing Trust had suggested that maybe we help with the expenses of bringing it into town-owned property. Are we anywhere like that? You know which subdivision I'm talking about?
Oh, you're talking about the subdivision we're foreclosing on?
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay,
same
because
one.
Affordable Housing Trust did consider supporting the cost of owning that by the town.
Right, and that was an
Affordable
article,
housing.
that was voted down.
No, that was not a fund article, that was an FYI article.
Right.
We could do, we, Affordable Housing Trust could still have spent that money without that article passing.
Right.
It wasn't approval to pay the money, it was looking to see what type of support was out there for it, but did not preclude us from offering funds for affordable housing in that project.
Right, and right after that article was discussed at
Yes.
town meeting,
Mhm.
I came back to the finance committee for money to go out and just foreclose on it.
Okay,
And they gave me the money, and it's in the process right now.
then you don't need any more from Affordable Housing
No,
Trust?
all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? John, I thank you, as
Okay,
usual.
thank you.
Thanks, Johnny.
We'll start off with the Board of Selectmen budget. What you see, there's two department assistants which fall directly under the Board of Selectmen on there. Really, their functions are, besides assisting the Board of Selectmen and helping out in the office, is they're the ones that do all the work for the liquor licenses, which can bring in close to $100,000 a year, the common victualers, and all the things that go in there, as well as when there's issues with liquor licenses and such. So they, if you were asking, this department actually pays for itself and then some. the cost going down there. There's advertising for 300, which is actually a little light for them, because don't forget they need to put out the town warrants and such. Dues and memberships are the MMA for the selectmen. We've got the printing and mailing, which again we print out and mail multiple things, whether it's to citizens and such. We've got a copier rental in there, and the conferences are for the MMA and anything that me and the selectmen would want to go for. You'll see a slight decrease in the FY'14 budget because there were increases that were budgeted in 2013 that did not come through.
The biggest number that I see is the conference number is 7,000 to 2,000. Am I reading that right?
Yes, and to
Why
go
is it-
to the MMA and sign up to all the events is truly about $7,000, and this probably isn't a good thing to admit. We started making the decision for the selectmen as to maybe how many they can go to, budget-wise.
He's on your side.
Your dues and memberships went up 4,500. It appears is that a new line?
That was, they were never funding it
They were never funded.
before, they were just letting it go into deficit.
Okay.
I don't have any questions on this.
Anyone else have any questions on?
I believe I only know if I think yourself, or I haven't heard that. Usually, especially with the MMA, it's the newest selectman to go. It's yeah, I think a few people at this table have gone. It's very informative, even though there's a cost to it. It's great to see what the surrounding communities are doing, get to meet with other finance committees, boards of selectmen and such, and probably the best way to meet people and understand what's going around the state, not just in your own town.
Next, nobody seems to have any more questions, so.
The next item would be administration, the administrator's office, where you have myself as the town administrator, and then my direct administrative assistant is Susan Green there, and then we have a departmental assistant that's at 32 hours. Susan Green is really, to be blunt now, I've brought her into the old office that I occupied. She is amazing with the amount of workload that I've been able to put on her. So I am very thankful for her and what she can do. She also acts as a block, if you will, to make sure that I can get the work done and people aren't walking in every 5 seconds. The other departmental assistant doesn't exactly do all of the functions you'd say out of the town administrator's office. A lot of it's personnel, tracking some of the ING accounts, doing work for the payroll, tracking sick days, vacation days and such, and that's much that that departmental assistant does. Susan Green, or the administrative assistant there, Susan also is the one that directly pays the health care bills. If you go to the salaries line on there, you'll see a decrease over the previous fiscal year. We are not funding the financial analyst position, and there was a decrease in the town administrator's salary. However, you'll see now in the expenses, other professional. Part of the hiring of the town administrator was that, especially since, there needed to be an opportunity to maybe work with an outside consultant if the time was needed. That was the desire of some some of the selectmen members on there, so we've budgeted 15,000 for that if it's needed on there. Cellular phone, you'll see that there's been a reduction in that. I don't currently have a town phone. I'm using my own, and I'd probably prefer that rather than having 2 phones in my belt. I'd make an IT joke, but Matt would get mad at that, I think. Continuing down through there, the largest line is actually the conferences line, which has been brought over. And part of that really should be contractual obligations in there, which would be about $2,020. And then there's also, besides the MMA conferences, there's several other conferences and also 2 media sources that are in there, which are being budgeted for, but are being struck out of the lines. What you don't see in here was, if you look back into the FY'12, there was other purchase services for about $5,200. The Office of the Town Administrator received law books every year that cost several $1,000s that I cut out of the budget, and we stopped that. So the savings from there were several $1,000s. I feel we can go online and look them up.
That seems to be the trend.
Yeah. So overall, before, you'll see a approximate $43,000 reduction in that.
I commend you on that, because if your budget can be dropped or slashed, it gives incentive to other budgets to follow the trend, where if yours didn't and yours went up, I think it would be an overall outlook that why should they? So I commend you on that, Derek.
Comment, observation that we've seen several times today. You're a very valuable employee. We don't have anybody else. We haven't replaced the position that you previously filled.
Correct.
We don't have anyone in charge of personnel. And we don't have anyone in charge of procurement. How many hats are you wearing these days? And do we have key man life insurance on him too?
That's right.
This is it. This is the bottom line budget. We really, again, I commend you for coming forward with this. But there's,
Inspection.
what are we going to cut? A couple of bucks for gas? And really, this is tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Anything further?
No thanks.
Next?
What's the other one that we have on there?
We're done.
The second one position is also involved in personnel. Is there a partial reallocation of wages there to another department line or another line?
Yeah.
All right, on your salary line, you have one line there, the salary is approximately $33,000. So the person performs not only work for the selectmen, but they also deal with personnel issues, et cetera. Where does that line appear? Where does the remainder of that person's salary appear?
No, that's that person's entire salary is under the administration. That's the
Where was it?
department.
I'm sorry, under the town administrator. Under the town administrator, right? That's the entire amount that person makes?
Yes,
The 33?
yes, it's a 32-hour week position,
Oh, okay. Very good.
which by technicality, it's called a part-time position, but in 32 hours, I don't really consider part-time.
Anything else? Which of the departments we've stated for today? The question has come up, and I'm going to raise it before we close down here. In businesses, there's a line, there's an item called key man insurance. And it's not a life insurance policy per se. It's basically a disability type policy that says, I have certain key people that if something happens to them, there's going to be a tremendous amount of expense to fill in for their positions. In talking to you, unfortunately off camera, it appears that we have no one in that category with our insurance agency. I honestly believe that's something the selectmen have to give serious consideration to, particularly what we heard today on at least a couple of positions. Because if anything, you know, we're, God forbid, you know, God willing that nothing does happen, we would be in serious trouble. And I think we need to, on your side, the town administrator's side, at least begin a moderate, quiet inquiry as to key man insurance and who we have in the system that actually, you know, would be a serious risk for us if something were to happen to them. No, it's not 20 individuals. It's not a big bonus thing for anybody. It's something to protect the town. All right, and I think we've heard some instances today, like I said, that we need some protection there. I'm not sure where we would put the number, but I honestly believe we need it. We saw one individual today, probably 5 people to replace that person. If, you know, he came down with the flu for 6 weeks or something.
Well, there were 2 people that came before us today that I said got a real problem. Then I looked at the maintenance department. We've got a guy at the helm that's been there for a lot of years. That kind of experience, depth of where he goes and what he does for funding is also hard. So I see at least 3 people that came before us today that I'd be worried about.
Yeah, the key man is only in case of, like I said, disability, that type of thing. If an individual decides to leave or something, that's another total issue. The other issue that we heard today that I think we've got to raise some flags to is disaster recovery. It's a major issue, especially for this town, which is subject to very severe weather, et cetera. All right, you know, having been involved in businesses with call centers and stuff, I mean, we had arrangements set up where we had an actual outlet in the side of the building that we could draw a trailer to and plug it in and be back in business. Now, here I see some real risk, and I'm not sure. I got the feeling that there may be some town history or some relevant town information that is not totally under the control of our IT, and control in the sense of being backed up. And I really think we need a clear understanding of the school's disaster recovery as well. But their IT recovery situation, yes. And you're sort of, I know you're sort of inheriting all this, so I'm just throwing these ideas out there because I think there are issues that have to be addressed, you know, by our executive authority, which is the Board of Selectmen. I think we're going to be sending them another letter saying these issues are critically important. Pardon?
Can't read.
You can't read. Well, we're not sending it to you, we're sending it to the chairman. All in all, it's, I think today was a pretty good day. It was a little discouraging because we didn't save $1 million. You know, but everybody really had a strong case for where they are. Everybody seems to have come to the understanding that they are going to be pretty much level funded this year at best.
No fluff.
There is no fluff.
More focus on revenue.
I didn't see any fluff there today where, you know, it was hard to ask questions that, for items that you could even begin to think might be fluff. All right?
Serious issue, you have to raise revenue.
But we've already been told by the town voters that they don't want, there are, yes, I guess the problem is there's ways to raise revenues, i.e. what the assessors asked for.
Yeah.
But not at the magnitude that we know we need.
We've waited too long.
Yes, we have waited far too long.
But in fairness,
Mr. Town Administrator, your words to us. Anything? Or just see you tomorrow morning?
It's, I guess we're best friends starting from last night, seeing each other the whole time there. But it's, I'm glad that we're doing this, especially filming it, because there's always a lot of perception out there. And seeing the department heads speaking about their departments and such, you know, you can see there's a lot of care and consideration going not only into their budgets, but their jobs and such. So there's also some passion in there, which is, well, so we can see when people get a little fired up, we understand why they do care. We know that they're, after last night, or I shouldn't say after last night, the last few years before my starting employment here, but right, from my understanding from day one, is that we do have a revenue issue. And we've pretty much cut down to the bone on there, so making the steps as to come up with $1 million it's gonna be interesting.
I'd like to make just one statement. I'd like to commend the town administrator. I believe the professionalism of the department heads and their attitudes is a major improvement over the last 5 or 6 years. It's just, there's a change in the feel of town as you see it this time. It was nice to see.
Any members have a comment? Well,
Agreed, it was more positive. The comment that I made today in terms of being able to put it in terms that people understand, if we want to make a case for more revenue, we have to make a case so that people can look at numbers and say, you know, this department, this is the kind of money they raise, this is what it costs to raise it. Police department, it's kind of a one-way street. But something that people can look at that shows where your revenues are coming from, by department, where your expenses are. Because we're gonna have to make a tough case to go for raising revenue. And I have to tell you up front, I'm one of the toughest cases you're gonna face because I don't get to do an override if I run short of funds at my house. And I know its business is different, that we have to realize that you are providing services. But I've never seen a government entity that functioned better when you gave it more money. Sad truth is that we're being consumed by our own benefits and salary packages, and we haven't kept pace with it over the years, and it's just out of hand at this point. And I don't know how you're gonna do it, Derek.
You can liken it, and this is no pun to what we've experienced, but a leak in the roof. It starts off with the drip, and you can live with the drip. You can put a pan underneath there, but the damage keeps on going, and eventually you've got a hole in there, and you've got a disaster. I know that people's pay has gone down from the federal level. Payroll tax has increased. If you're, unless you're employed in some other type of business, your income's gone down. The governor's proposed an increase in taxes for at the state level, and now we'd probably be asking for it at the local level. So at the end of the day, it's, the people that live in here, the citizens and community, are the ones that are getting hit from all these angles.
Conversely, if I might, I've been retired, some people would say probably too long. I retired at 55, whatever, I forget now. My retirement check does not increase. What I started with will be what I finish with. But each year, my government in Washington says, oh, 2.5 or 3% inflation is good because it causes growth. Well, that says that without compounding, every 10 years I took a 30% reduction in my buying power of my pension. So when we talk about cost of goods and services, we really need to look at what's our population that's retired. And I don't know how people can survive. I don't think they can survive on Social Security. We've never intended for that. But they're just being driven harder and harder. And they're part of this population that we have to convince to go for greater revenue. Their taxes go up every year, more than they receive as a total. So while, yes, your employees are suffering, so are a lot of citizens. And they're the ones that have to be convinced.
Donnie, any comments before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we could wrap it up until tomorrow.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I want to make one last suggestion to the town administrator here for Mike. There's a couple different ways, as far as raising revenues for the department heads and trying to match it, and trying to do another whole accounting system with no resource again. However, there is also an easy way to do it, and that is to look at how much each department head raises each year, and to set a goal in the budget process that says, we would expect you to come up with the same money or 5% more or whatever. What can you do? When you put it into the into the budget analysis, if nothing else, it gains a focus that says to them, you need to get out there and do something, because at the end of the year, we sit down and talk about how well you did your job, it's going to come up. Okay? But it doesn't put the pressure necessarily to go into specific programs or whatever. But it's still a simple case of, hey, do you have a way to raise another $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000? What can you do to make sure that they're constantly looking, constantly seeking? All right, give them a measurement and make it worth their while. Everybody likes an attaboy. That's a simple way of doing it versus trying to match it up. All right, and it should go for the school department as well. It should be across all lines. What have we been able to get? It also can be very helpful if from one year, like the school has run into, if they can't raise that money, what's the reason? Okay, it was no longer funded or whatever, but if we fail to, to actually go out and actively seek something, that's an accountable item.
Do you have a suggestion system? Do you have a suggestion system?
Leave it to the selectmen.
Do you have a suggestion system? Places I've worked had suggestion systems. They went into a board, they looked at it, they evaluated it, you got 10% of what the suggestion was actually worth. Sounds picayune, but there were some good suggestions that went through, and they were money savers. I don't even know if you have that. It's an area that you can consider. There are some things that we do that must grate some people.
Is that any motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We're adjourned until tomorrow.